This franchise's timeline is broken. I went through the Alien timeline to make sense of things, and I wound up even more confused than I could ever imagine. Especially because I took into account both sets of timelines, the one without non-canon events and the one with non-canon events. Obviously, non-canon timelines cannot be in the same universe. Of course, David's storyline conflicts with the AVP storyline that designates xenomorphs as being more ancient and going farther back than David's own existence. Then you have the whole Blade Runner shit, where Blade Runner is also apparently maybe a part of the Alien timeline back on Earth, but Blade Runner's version of Earth is very different from Alien Earth's version of Earth. They don't look like the same world at all whatsoever, despite Blade Runner taking place in 2019 and 2049 before the events of Alien Earth. So they can't be in the same universe. Then of course you have the whole Predator Badlands thing, where there's a Weyland synthetic in this Predator world, and that could be its own timeline, who knows? We might be dealing with the Xeno multiverse here. A multiverse of xenomorph storylines. Now, many of you already say, okay, Safi, well, I mean, yeah, non-canon movies like AVP are their own timeline, are their own universe, so by that standard, it is a multiverse. But even canon movies within the same original timeline don't belong in the same fucking universe now. Even canon IPs within the Alien franchise drift off into their own shit. We might be dealing with some MCU multiverse level stuff here, y'all. And this fundamentally comes down to one issue. Nobody in charge of these movies understands what the xenomorphs are anymore. And we're going to get to that. This is the official timeline. Cinematically, I'm not accounting for video games, although we will mention one video game in this video to make sense of things. This is the official cinematic timeline. Alien Earth takes place 2 years before Alien. And since that's our most recent franchise entry, it's the most important. This is it. We have not seen anything after Alien Resurrection. Nobody's bothered to touch on what's happened post-resurrection. I tried to solve the timeline crisis with Alien. Here we go. The first issue comes up with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, the prequel films. The engineers used pathogen to create deacons. Deacons were their gods. They worshipped them, as is made evident by the fact that there's a deacon on a fucking mural. These are basically the engineers' gods that they worship. Whether we don't know why they worship them. I believe that they worship deacons because they saw deacons as a god of life. Because deacons can use pathogen to extend themselves into entire ecosystems. Like we saw in the comics with one deacon basically turning into a fucking mountain. Then David came through in Prometheus and bastardized their process in Alien Covenant. Turning that process of creating face huggers and making deacons, basically turning it into the devil. By creating the xenomorphs. He created two beings, the neomorph and the protomorph, and then in Alien Covenant at the end, he basically takes the Covenant ship to do experiments with the rest of the colonies and basically to create his first xenomorph. And he would send recordings of various experiments and his thoughts about things to Weyland. So this pretty much tells us xenomorphs are engineered bioweapons resulting from a process of engineering deacons with the pathogen that the engineers first created. So instead of xenomorphs being this ancient thing that predates everything, they're literal bioweapons, refined over time from the process of the deacons to xenomorphs by David, killing the mystery of the Lovecraftian force that is the xenomorphs. But then you have Alien 1, which shows us a space jockey that apparently, according to scientists, could be fossilized for thousands of years, at least seemingly, and it got hit with a chest burster. And I'm assuming it was an alien queen that burst out of it and birthed more eggs and then later aged out over time. And yet, we're supposed to believe David was the one to create the first real xenomorph, refined from the process of the engineers, when the space jockey indicates that they have been existing before David and maybe before or around the same time as the deacons. So what the hell's going on here? And there's an 18-year gap between Covenant and Alien that could explain how David got there, got to LV-46 and how that engineer ship crashed. We never got it, and it still wouldn't really explain the fossilized, 1,000-year fossilized space jockey. Then you have Alien Earth, which is a whole other can of worms. And this is where you guys need to understand something. Noah Hawley, the guy who made the show, does not even himself know where this takes place in the timeline. We're getting 3 different comments by him. His first comment, when it was talked about, was like, oh, it's around the time of Aliens. Then he establishes, no, this is 2 years before the first Alien. Then he says it's outside of the timeline completely and it's its own thing because he's ignoring all the David, Prometheus and Covenant stuff, but it's also a prequel to the first 2 Aliens, so he doesn't know what the hell is even going on. He doesn't know. But this show establishes that Weyland-Yutani knows about the xenomorphs and has taken their Maggonaut ship to go planet searching and found xenomorph eggs, a lot of them, along with other organisms. And they have data backed behind it, stored on their ships that one of their cyborgs got and downloaded. So Weyland-Yutani knows that their ship has got xenomorphs. They know. This is established in the show. Yutani herself knows this. And yet they are hellbent on LV-426. They're so hellbent that they send a colony down there, a terraforming system down there, and use the colony as bait for xenomorphs. Then they're obsessed with Ellen Ripley to the point where later, 100 years later, a military organization clones her, right? Like, somehow Weyland-Yutani is obsessed with Ellen Ripley's crew having to go to the xenomorphs on this one planet LV-426 really badly. Even though it's proven in Alien Earth that the Maggonaut ship has found xenomorphs on other planets. Why not just go there? Unless the Maggonaut ship went to LV-426, that's the planet they'd originally gone on, which is not referenced in the show, but maybe. And what happened to the other aliens? Did they just forget about all the other aliens? It seems unlikely because there's some of them who have a lot of potential, like Teocellus. And you're telling me a multi-season story, which Alien Earth might end up being, takes place before Alien 1? And in this story, xenomorphs are loose on an island that's taken over by synthetic hybrids. You have lots of footage of these xenomorphs around, with lots of eyewitnesses who may or may not make it off the island. And yet, this is a secretive thing later in the series. 2 years later, nobody knows about xenomorphs except for Weyland, who's sending the ship to LV-426. And then the look of the world doesn't match the alien universe at all. When I see this world, it looks like our world. Literally looks like a fucking city here right now. It doesn't look like a city that's hundreds of years away with some resource depletion in need of other planets to colonize and all this stuff. It doesn't seem like it's the same world. So that's what I'm saying here. In this storyline, you really have to make us buy that in 10 years, this world goes completely berserk afterwards. And we can explain that. Then you have Alien Romulus. Basically, Weyland-Yutani finds the remains of what happened in Alien 1. Finds that xenomorph drifting in space, cocooned itself. From that alien, they take pathogen out of it. Again, why would Weyland-Yutani have to do that if the Maggonaut ship already knows where to go to find xenomorph eggs, as is established in Alien Earth? Why would they have to do that when David has been telling them recordings of their xenomorphs, and maybe telling them where he's gone? Maybe the Covenant ship has a tracker on it. I don't know. And then they're gone to Yavaga 6 with the pathogen. And we know that there's going to be a sequel to Alien Romulus with another Xeno outbreak. And we have this motherfucker also floating in space. So again, you have multiple xenomorphs on multiple worlds popping up, and you're telling me that this is supposed to take place before aliens? And again, why is Weyland-Yutani hellbent on taking a colony to bait in LV-426 with xenomorph eggs there, when they have evidence that there's xenomorphs on other worlds, multiple worlds, and multiple outbreaks? It just seems too crazy. I know that xenomorphs get destroyed in almost every single one of these IPs, except for Alien Earth. But still, it just seems a bit unlikely, given everything we've been told. The fact that the Maggonaut crew found xenomorphs on another planet, that David has been giving them intel, it doesn't seem to match up. Alien 1 gives me the vibe that the corporation knew about xenomorphs. Yeah, from David maybe. But like they really needed the LV-426 crew to retrieve something. Badly. And then you have the fucking Weyland synthetic in Predator Badlands. So you're telling me that Predators are now up in here too? We might be getting an AVP3 off of that? Have the Predators interacted with the humans in this timeline? Because we know the AVP and the Predator movies are not canon to the Xenomorph universe. So the Yaoja have just been in space and haven't interacted with the humans at all. Maybe they have. How does this make sense? The problem is, like I said, the franchise can't decide what xenomorphs are. Are they ancient bioweapons created by the engineers? Or deacons created by the engineers and then refined by David? Recently created by David Android? Are they a natural occurring species that's predated us, like AVP suggests? Like we thought was the case in the beginning? Or are they something that suddenly appears on different planets, like Alien Earth would seem to suggest? I really like and I appreciate AVP's lore when it comes to xenomorphs and predators. How the xenomorphs are an ancient species, and nobody, not the humans or the predators, know where they came from, and the predators use them for their rituals. And there's mystery behind their origin, but the predators just saw them as the perfect prey. Another problem is that the producers involved seem hellbent on fitting in stories within the timeline of Aliens and Alien 1. They don't give a fuck about what happens post-resurrection. And probably because Earth is destroyed post-resurrection, but most of the Alien movies don't even take place on Earth. They are obsessed with fitting in their movies in the timeline of the two best critically acclaimed Alien movies and nothing else. That's one of the bigger issues too. And it keeps fucking up the timeline. There are two theories at play here. I've broken it down. One,
perhaps an explanation for the space jockey, fossilized and ancient, is that the xenomorphs that killed that ancient space jockey were in fact ancient. The space jockey and that ship was in fact ancient. And David's strain of xenomorphs is just a copycat strain that he derived from looking at the engineer's notes, as is made evident by his recordings to Wayland. He's refined their process. Perhaps it was an original strain of xenomorphs created in tandem with the original deacons, ones that the engineers did not want to fuck with, and David started recreating them. And whatever we see on LV-426 is just part of the original experiments by the engineers, and David's experiments are separate from that, with a new strain of xenomorphs that are copycat xenomorphs.
So, David's recordings, after he experimented with the xenomorphs, reached Wayland. Then they sent the Maggonaut ship to grab some xenomorphs and some other organisms, took them down to Earth. Then we have the events of Alien Earth. At some point, this causes a rift between the 5 companies that causes them to have a war for these resources, for these aliens. This leads to, 1, Prodigy Island getting nuked, most likely, and Earth going to war, and companies wasting their resources during this war. While it's funny, trying to get resources and in their competition, causing an arms race and causing the world to go to shit, basically. With Weyland-Yutani coming out on top, okay? Think about it like this. This makes sense. The events of Alien Earth directly lead to the collapse of Earth. Earth is not seen in any Alien movie until Alien Resurrection, where it's destroyed. Every time we see a planet, it's either a colony planet, like a planet with a colony on it, or stations, space stations, or a moon. The only time we've seen Earth since Alien Earth is in Resurrection, when it's fucking destroyed. Looks like it's been destroyed as a cause of war and resource depletion. Earth's been destroyed for hundreds of years, and Ellen Ripley never knew it. So, Alien 1, Earth was still there, right? Earth was still cool, everything was fine. At the time of Aliens, I believe Earth has been destroyed. As a direct result of the 5 companies competing with each other going to war. She's shown a picture of her daughter, who died apparently a couple of years prior to them finding her in cryosleep, finding Ellen Ripley. This was a cover-up. Alien Isolation fans know this was a cover-up. Because Alien Isolation, she goes to find her mother, trying to figure out what happened to her mother at the station. And she uses cryosleep as a way to give herself time until there's a cure for her cancer at this time. So 15 years after the first Alien, Ellen Ripley's daughter goes to find her at a station. And she doesn't die. She doesn't die of old age. No, she puts herself in cryosleep until a cure for cancer is found. And she's adrift somewhere. We don't know where. Wayland covered it up because I guess Wayland wanted to kill this woman because she was trying to expose Weyland-Yutani and they didn't know where she was. So, between Alien Earth and Alien Romulus, there was a 2-decade-long war caused as a result of what happened on Alien Earth with 5 companies warring for alien resources. Shit happened on Earth. Weyland-Yutani won, but they were really badly in need of these same alien resources that they fought over. So, this is what happened. A war for resources among the 5 corporations as a result of Alien Earth caused Weyland-Yutani to be the predominant company that took over everything in space, but everyone else lost. Now we have corporatization of different planets, colonies here, slave labor, all this shit. Everything literally went to shit. Or, you have the other possible theory, which suggests this is a multiverse. Alien and aliens are the only constant in each timeline of the multiverse, okay? That's just how it is. So, the original timeline is Alien 1 to Alien Resurrection. Timeline 2 is Prometheus, Covenant, Romulus, Alien 1 to 3. I don't think Ridley Scott even thinks 4 exists. I think Ridley Scott ignored it. Timeline 3 is Alien Earth, Alien, and Aliens, because Noah Hawley clearly doesn't care about any movie besides those. Timeline 5 is Romulus, Alien 1, 2, 3, Predator Badlands, which could be in the same universe if Predator is in the Alien universe, and Alien 4 Resurrection, which probably takes place after Badlands. Timeline 6, which is the Predator movies, AVP and AVP2, the non-canon timeline. Timeline X, all Alien movies, and then Predator Badlands. So Predators never came to Earth before. Predator Badlands is the first time we see Predators and aliens interact. Timeline 7 is the Predator timeline, which is Predator, Killer of Killers, blah, 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 all that. And then AVP3, which will eventually come after Badlands if they do it. And then Timeline 8 is the Blade Runner timeline, where Blade Runner and Alien are in the same universe. And it's Blade Runner, Alien, Aliens, Alien Earth is not there. So we have fucking 8 timelines. in the Xenomorph multiverse, and I'm not even counting the video game timeline, which is probably more canonical with the films than Alien Earth and Prometheus are at this point. What a fucking mess. So either it's a Xenomorph multiverse, or you can say that Alien Earth and Prometheus were part of the same timeline, and Alien Earth directly led to Earth being destroyed, and then the shit that followed after. This timeline does not make any sense. I'm trying my best here, but I don't think the writers or producers even care about the timeline anymore. Nobody even acknowledges Alien Resurrection as a thing in the franchise. If they're going to start making movies about Alien, can we stop trying to fit it within Alien and Aliens? Between, before, or right after. Stop that. Try to make your story outside of these movies now, and just go maybe do one after Alien Resurrection. I don't even know. I don't even know what they can do at this point. Stop having a Xenomorph storyline that involves Earth, because that's when it really stops making sense. Alien Romulus can make a little bit of sense because it's an isolated area in space. Alien Earth, it doesn't make sense because Earth is central to a lot of things that are happening within Weyland Yutani and Ellen Ripley, who is an inhabitant on Earth. You know, like, you're fucking things up by bringing Xenomorphs to Earth and having humans exposed to them. Because then it ruins the vitality of what happens in the movie that's coming next, Alien 1. I like the fact that Alien 1's the first time humans have ever interacted with Xenomorphs. But now, the timeline shifted 50 different ways to make it so that's not the case. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on a mission to take over Hollywood. But the army must keep growing. If you want to suggest video topics to me, or talk about your favorite movies or favorite film theories in a community with like-minded individuals, join the Zafy Discord now. Link is in the description and the comment section as well. Join us. This movement is just beginning. We're taking over Hollywood, one coke line at a time.